Simon's my twin brother. He's my identical twin. We grew up in the Lake District in Cumbria. Had a very happy family childhood. Very close, as twins, and it's a very unique relationship between. I think you can only understand being a twin if you've been a twin yourself. Simon just lived his life to the full. He and I think we had one passion together, which was our football. We were both big Carlisle fans, big Carlisle United supporters, and we loved meeting up for football. He lived in the north and I lived in the south, but we'd always connect. My wife and I were actually heading up to Cumbria for a long weekend. We were actually doing some camping. It was August Bank Holiday weekend in 1998. It was just an all weekend, and we were heading up the motorway, and we were stopping off at we were going to stop off at Chester, which was my parents' house, for the Friday night, and then head up to Cumbria on the Saturday, which is what we did. And then on the Sunday, we were just driving around. We were actually driving in a place called Whitehaven, which is where Sam and I were born. It was incredible irony, actually. I was driving past the hospital where we were actually born, and my dad called me up on my mobile phone. And he said, I just remember, he says to me, he said, "Nick, you've got to pull over. You've got to pull over. I've got to tell you something." And I went, "Dad, what's the problem?" He said, "No, just pull over. I don't want you to be driving when I tell you this." I pulled over, we found a call box, and I called him, and he said, "Simon's been murdered. You've got to come home immediately." I remember kicking the phone box that was in. It was just couldn't believe what happened. And then, of course, immediately got all these questions in your head: what, how, why, and how it happened. And Simon had been found floating in a pond. He had been beaten after night out. It turned out that he'd been beaten very badly, and he drowned. So he was found by a man walking his dog on Saturday morning. This was following Friday night that he'd been out. It's hard to describe you in a zombie. You're a bit like a zombie. You don't eat, you don't sleep, and you're so shocked you don't know what to say or do. And I remember going into the supermarket and seeing people just getting on with their life, and I'd lost my brother, and it was in such a horrible way. I remember my mum was just deeply upset at some points in time. She had to run out. She couldn't listen to some of the details. But we were, as a family, we were very united as a family. We sat through all the trial. We were determined to see the whole thing. And we wanted to see the responses from those two individuals that were sitting in the dock, So their names were Craig and Carl. Craig was the 16-year-old, the younger, and Carl was the older one, who was 19, I believe, at the time. They were sent to prison, and we tried to get on with our lives, and it was. I think we were very brave as a family, and there's been lots of roller coaster emotions. On a personal level, I've had a lot of counselling and a lot of support. I've been through up and down. I've had moments where I've needed a lot of counselling support. I think it impacts parents deepest. The loss of a child or sibling. A child must be horrendous, and it was for my parents. And my mum and dad still are deeply hurt. As we all are. Different levels of recovery from different members of the family. But we got permission to attend both of the prisoners' parole hearings and started to attend these hearings. And at these hearings, you simply just go into the hearing and read out your statement. Read out what they call a victim impact statement to the parole board and to the prisoner. A lot of people don't want to ever go to that place and see the prisoners. We wanted to do that. We really wanted to see them, and we really wanted to read our statements out and tell them and look them in the eye and tell them how much they'd hurt us. this particular prison was a what they call a restorative prison, where they do a lot of therapy work. And I got talking to one of the probation officers in that prison, and she told me about restorative justice at that prison. It was a very big thing for that prison, and she told me about it. And that's when I first got to hear about restorative justice at the probation hearing. We were put in touch with two restorative justice facilitators, a lady called Mandy and a lady called Jenny, and we started then, in essence, I think it was an 8-month process where we had several meetings. So they were meeting with me and they were meeting with Craig, and we were doing back-to-back, back and forth meetings, about 4 or 5 meetings. You explore what the meetings are about, you explore what questions you want to ask, what things you want to find out, how the meetings happen, how it can emotionally affect you, what you would do, support, and all those kind of things, and all kinds of things. It takes a long time to explore that whole motivational reasons why, what to expect, understanding it, and both of you are getting that. So I was getting that, and Craig was getting that, and then maybe about 7 months in, out of that 8 months, we said yes, this is going to work for both of us. We're going to do it. And we agreed on a date. We actually stayed very close to the prison the night before, sort of almost to emotionally get ourselves ready. And we went to the prison early that morning. He was staying in a very high security prison near Milton Keynes, I remember, and I basically prepared lots of questions, and I'd written them all down, and so I had lots of notes with me. And Julie, my wife, was there to support me on the day. The meeting started mid-morning. I remember getting into the chapel and being very weak in the knees, very emotional. I actually, had a few tears before Craig was called in. He was, at this point, he was in an adjacent room. We were in the prison chapel, and he'd come out of his cell, and he was being kept in another room with the prison guard. And it was only when I was ready that he was going to get called in. I wanted to really impart to him the hurt that he'd put on our family. A chance for me to give my side of the story, really, which he'd probably never heard, or maybe heard snippets of, very little. I took pictures along. I showed him those pictures because I was actually prepared to ask Craig, if he was prepared to answer it, tell me how you killed my brother. And I wanted to, as his twin brother, I felt a need to understand how my brother died, precisely how he died, what had happened on that night, and even things like what was the last thing Sam said, and was he crying, was he in pain, and it was very hard for me to do that, but as his twin, I wanted to understand that. I wanted to take time to really fill some of those gaps. I said, Craig, just take me through how you killed Simon that night, and he started off literally from where he met Simon and how it happened and what Simon had said, and then to the point of the attack, taking him into the woods, into the part where he was attacked, describing the attack on him, describing why, describing how Simon had was crying and asking him to stop. And he didn't. I mean, the one thing I was impressed with is he didn't try and relinquish any responsibility for what he'd done. He was accepting it. He did it. I mean, one of the things I said to Craig, and I made this very clear from the outset, is that I'd never forgive him for what he did. Never. And for me, restorative justice was not about forgiving him. It was about hearing him say sorry, and to be fair to Craig, he said things like, how can I ever say sorry to you and your family for what I've done? Because it's a very hollow word. It's what I've done is evil, and I was a very damaged person when I did it. So, getting that context and hearing him talk like that was helped me get some closure. One thing I've really got is a real sense of where he'd come from, in terms of his very broken childhood and his the circumstance that got him to where he was on the night that he killed my mother, and how in that sense he was a very damaged person. And my brother had a 1,000,000,000 to 1 chance meeting with him that night. He was very lucky, and he lost his life for it. For me, meeting him in the restorative justice process made me realise that he's a recovering human being. That he's recovering from a very serious error in his life. I've always wrestled with the question about, do people like that deserve a second chance? Should I, as the victim's family, as the victim's twin brother, should I respect that he's allowed to have a second chance in life and come out of jail? It's helped me understand and reconcile with that more, that he is going to come out and he is going to live his life again. In a murder situation, you're always tagged as victims, and one of the things for me that restorative justice helped was remove that victim tag. I guess in some sense I'm always going to be a victim per se, but you kind of now think of yourself as a recovering human being who's been the victim of something very horrible, but you're recovering and moving on and living your life with that. And restorative justice has helped me to do that.